This is a topic that is really dear to my heart because I feel like this industry has gone through a bit of a stagnation. And that was apparent yesterday on some of the questions that Derek threw out at us. I feel in an industry that is now has pretty much matured with extremely high acquisition costs. The ability to break into this sector and to thrive in it is really difficult now. Occasionally you'll see a company like Huge or Merca break into the top 20, the top 15, but it's really rare to see those companies because this industry, I feel like, has struggled to innovate because these CPIs are so high. And I have 3 people on this panel who I've worked with in the past who have both B2C and B2B. They have sort of pivoted from the B2C world and moved into the B2B, which is also not an easy thing to do. So I'm going to let each of the panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to go into the opportunities and risks and struggles of moving into the B2B sector, mainly catering to the land-based casinos. So I'll start with you.
My name is Bryan Bennett. I'm the SVP of SVP of AGS Interactive. AGS is a real money slot developer supplier for land-based casinos. We're one of the major suppliers for tribal casinos all over the country, and I lead the interactive division, which as of now really is social. AGS acquired my startup, which was Rocket Play, 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And our primary game is Lucky Play Casino. We were 100% focused on the B2C space at the time, and kind of spent all of 2017 kind of completing our pivot into B2B for a variety of reasons that we'll go into a little bit later. But yeah.
I'm Brett Calapp. I'm the Chief Social Gaming Officer at Paula Interactive. We are a real money gaming company and social B2B provider. So we have real money games in the state of New Jersey. And we also provide businesses with B2B social casino and mobile on-premise. We've been focused on both sides, so on real money focused on consumer facing, and then on the B2B being a supplier, so we kind of have a unique view of that.
And I'm Michael Carpenter. I'm CEO of Ruby 7 Studios, and we are both a B2C and B2B operator of social casinos, including Trop World for Tropicana Entertainment, Best Bet for the Pechanga Casino and Resort, and Lucky North Casino for Delaware North. We also have games like Multi-Strike Poker and Ruby 7 Video Poker and Big Spin Bingo that we operate and run as a B2C game.
So I gave the example of escalating acquisition costs. And sort of the expansion from B2C to B2B as attributable to largely because it's so difficult to compete. And I was wondering maybe if you could share a little bit the decision to move from a B2C world to a B2B world.
Sure. I mean, obviously, just in the last panel, they were talking about UA. UA is always a source of consternation for everyone in this space. But that wasn't the only reason that we made the move. I think it made a lot of sense just kind of where we are as a company. As I mentioned, AGS already does business with 600 plus casinos across the U.S. today on the land-based side, selling table games and slots, and we have a full sales team that goes out and already talks to all of these customers. So I think as we were kind of continuing down the path of really focusing on B2C, all the types of events I would go to when I was at headquarters or just at, occasionally I would visit customer casinos. I was starting to get asked a lot about, could AGS white label our B2C platform? And for the first 1.5 years of our tenure with AGS, we always just kind of kept them at arm's length and said, no, we have our focus. We're 100% focused on B2C, and we just weren't interested for a variety of reasons. But I think as 2016 sort of wrapped up, going through some budgeting processes, looking at our UA spend, it just became harder and harder to compete where we wanted to with Product Madness and Playtika and all those guys. There was just no way we were going to be able to keep up from a spend perspective. So we really started kind of looking at what our growth opportunities would be, and we have a lot of customers on the land-based side, casino customers that are massive, have millions of users in their database, have big properties that get millions of visitors every year. So that's when we really started entertaining it and started reaching out and doing some feelers and looking at our platform to see what it would take. And all those things kind of came into, kind of came to a head probably December of 16. And that's when we kind of made the final strategic decision that B2B would be our focus. And it was kind of in tune with our 2017 budgeting process and strategic plan, things like that. But then it took a solid year to really make the pivot, and we can get into some of the reasons why. It is basically like selling enterprise software. So just getting your name out there, making sure people are aware you have a solution, trying to plug all the holes you have, because we did have holes. That took a long time, and we're still kind of going through that process today.
I think,
and all your journeys are sort of really different. So
they are. We started as we're a technology company at heart, and we had a platform, and we had to harden that platform because it was new, and this is over 3 years ago. So we deployed in the state of New Jersey without a brand and without a database. And we like to say that we're not first and we're not last. We're hanging out right in the middle, and that's exactly where we expected to be and continually growing. And B2B social for us was a natural extension, because really it was an extension from our platform. And having a sister company that is a land-based casino in Paula Casino Spa and Resort out in Temecula was a big advantage for us, because it allowed us to kind of understand the intricacies of what goes on within a land-based casino and what are their needs as an operator to their players, and to really be able to develop our social architecture and our social product based on learnings from them directly, and then roll that out to other customers.
So for Ruby 7, we actually never really pivoted. We just took a while to get our first B2B client. So in the first few months of our company, we actually sat with the senior team at Venetian to help them develop their social casino strategy. And we were probably a little ahead of ourselves on that, because I'm not sure we could have executed in 2012 with the content that was necessary for that. But we knew that there was a potential of taking a brand like Venetian, which is probably one of the greatest brands in gaming, and use not only that brand extension but also that database to grow a game in those early days of Ruby 7, actually, in our company. It took almost 2 years to get Trop to sign with us, and then that was our first major B2B product.
But you had investment before then from Rush, which was helpful, right?
Yeah, so we had an investment from real money game companies. Rush was our first major investor in the company. Tropicana became an investor as well. And so we were tight with the land-based casino groups as we developed.
So I guess my takeaway from the first question would be that you need something special to make it in B2B, right? You've got your access to the land-based casino plus an app that was performing quite well, and you've got ties to the land-based gaming. Both of you have ties to the land-based gaming industry, so it's not something that's just, hey, I'm going to just pivot into B2B and make it work. You brought up something about content. How important, you referred to the fact that you didn't have the content back in 2012 to make it work. So how important is having access to the land-based content? I assume that that's what you meant by having the content.
Yeah, I mean, we've known all along that the content that sits on the casino floors is going to be the best content for people who go to casinos and like to play casino games. That's not a stretch. That's why Aristocrat and iGaming and everybody does really, really well with their social casino plus their execution. So for us, we did start to get some early IGT content that other people didn't have by signing indie studios that had their social rights to their real money game content. And that kind of started us on the path. And then with the help of our casino partners, we were able to get Aristocrat and Konami and all of the games that are found on the casino floor. And that does help a lot. Those games do get the most play. It's not a secret why. They're the games that most of the clients are used to playing, and they're brands that people know in the real money gaming world.
I mean, obviously you're sitting on land-based content, so you know how important it is. I mean, but you didn't always have it before you were acquired, so.
No, when we were a private company, we built our own content, and we literally our head of product kind of self-taught himself how to design slots based on finding some par sheets online for Wolf Run, and we kind of went from there. And the content we had for social was actually fine. It played okay, but but once we were acquired, we've only ported AGS content, and we started with like the back catalog, some really old stuff, just to see how it would work. And it was, even though it looked terrible, because literally there was some, AGS has some old content that's 15 plus years old. It's super pixelated. There's a game called Royal Reels that is hugely popular in Oklahoma and Florida. And so we put it in, and it immediately became our most popular machine. And it just looked terrible compared to everything else. But it, the math was perfect. It takes you on this journey, and that's what people wanted to play. And then we started putting some other back catalog in, and then finally we kind of convinced our CTO, that like AGS CTO, that we were good partners and that we could protect the math and all that stuff. And he started giving us some of the better stuff, and then it really took off. I mean, people, every time we launch some of our really good content that's actually on the casino floor today, that our sales team is actively pushing to casinos today, that content immediately becomes the most popular in the game, just because it's really good math. It's everything: the math, the art, the sound, the music, the spin speeds, everything together just makes it significantly better than anything else we could have. So we're 100% focused on content today.
And you come at it from the land-based. Well,
but I personally come at it from I'm kind of in the middle. So my theory and our theory is that we like a healthy mix of content. I mean, there's no doubt that the tried and true stuff that's on the floor performs, but there's also a lot of cases out there in the world of top performing content and social casino content that's never touched a casino floor. And I think looking at how can you bring in different types of content, how can you test different content genres within the machines or within the environment that aren't specifically on the floor, is just something different that your players can do. Do they perform as well as the tried and true stuff? Not all the time, but we have homegrown and independent content that performs just on par with some of that stuff. So I think there's a mix to kind of differentiate you, because at the end of the day, a lot of B2B ends up with a very similar content package. And so if you're selling this and you can go with something that's slightly different, I think you do have some sort of differentiated advantage.
You mean like in terms of features?
No, in terms of just game content itself. So if you're bringing in, independent studio content that's not on the floor, if you're creating your own internal content that you're building from your own guys to inspire your team to be creative, and saying, hey, you guys get to build a machine every year, every quarter that gets launched in here. I just think there's a way to kind of have the best of both, and that allows you to have some differentiation in the marketplace, and also just kind of change things up for the users and test other things and experiment. I think the great thing about online social casino that's different than land-based is you kind of have this open petri dish to test things very, very fast, right? So you can experiment, and you can turn games on and turn games off, and you can experiment with math models that you can't do if you had to put it in a cabinet and get it regulated and get it approved and get it certified and get it on the floor. So,
I mean, do you see your studio, your game studio, kind of turning and saying, well, let's try this on social first? Do you ever see that happening?
No, not really. I mean, we talked about maybe helping them test math models, but instead, no. The AGS content is doing really well on the casino floor, and as a result, our game studio in Atlanta, we have 250 plus people focused on building slots in Atlanta, and they try to keep things under wraps because it is a fast-following industry. So rather than launching something innovative and new on social first and giving everyone a sneak peek, they would prefer to kind of hold it back and have it launched on the customer floor first. I hope at some point we can change that around a little bit, but right now we generally launch, if something hits the floor, we get it in social 6 months later, and that's sort of the cadence we're on right now, which is kind of fine for us. We have a huge backlog that we can do, but ideally we'd do maybe a little sooner, but that's how we're doing it now.
And you mentioned experimenting, and I know that you were one to be open to experimenting. I saw on Best Bet, or was it Delaware North, that you had a trivia, right? Did it work? Did it not work? How do you figure out like when do you double down on it or when do you kill it?
Yeah, so that we brought trivia, competitive trivia into social casino as a way of kind of bridging the world of the Delaware North sports group into the world of social casino. We thought trivia, especially sports trivia, would be a nice entry point for some of those players to come over. If I had it to do over again, I probably wouldn't do it.
But you experimented, right? So you know now not to do it.
You know, it monetizes. It's just not, you know, it's a lot of work, and it, you know, we could have built lots of slot games in that same amount of time, and you know, I'm not sure it's the right genre for social casino, but we are looking at other things. I mean, Keno does extremely well for us, and who would have thought that? You know, that's not an obvious. And our video poker does it incredibly well. So we've invested very heavily in video poker, both internally developed and external.
So when you're going out and you're catering to these land-based casinos, and yet we've seen companies like iGaming and Ainsworth and IGT sort of either say, no, I'm not giving you this content, therefore, you know, how do you bridge the gap to your clients where there's like, I'd really like to have that content on my casino floor, on my social. I mean, have we seen any movement in the iGaming of the world? I mean, obviously, we can come to you as a separate, because you live on both sides of that. Like, you're licensing third-party content, and then you're licensing your content, so you're in a bit of a different situation. But I know that for my clients, my casino clients, they want that content that's on the casino floor, that's visible, that's branded, but yet they still can't have it. Has there been any movement?
Well, Penn is signed, and there's others, including...
Are they one-offs? Will it always be one-offs?
It won't be their top content, that's for sure. But I think all the land-based providers now, except IGT, because of the Double Down deal, are playing in this space, especially for casino-driven social efforts, because the casino is the one that's actually writing the big checks for the machines on the floor. So I think that's, I don't think anybody's saying no anymore.
Okay, well that's good. Have you seen anything, Brett?
I don't, I think it's really new. So I think it's still really young in what they're doing. I think they're, you know, they've heard the land-based casinos barking and yelling that, hey, you got to make our content available. I think for a lot of them, especially if they provide their content on a B2C, for their own internal B2C, and it's successful, it's hard for them to say, I'm going to give you the top content. So you're going to get quote-unquote classic titles. You may get one or two kind of secondary performers. But I think the real power here is, can your land-based partner leverage their purchasing power to help facilitate a better economic deal or some sort of creative economic deal that allows you to get more titles or get it faster or get preview to releases sooner than everyone else. So I think there's still a lot of flexibility in deal making, because I don't think everyone exactly knows what that business model is from the land-based side. They're going to say, okay, you can, if it's a flat fee, or it's a flat fee based on reduced based on the number of machines you're going to be, or it's some sort of rev share based on the virtual currency wagering. Everyone's still trying to experiment and figure that out.
What are you seeing? I mean, you're in a bit of a unique, you know, you're out there trying to license third-party content, I imagine, and then license your content.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, from our content perspective, so we have our B2C product, which we still do, you know, well with and still support. We have our B2B product, which we're talking about, and we also have like an RGS, like a social RGS is what we. It's not real money appropriate, but it's a way for us to share content with other providers if there's a good business reason to do that. And typically the good business reason is a land-based casino will come up and say, hey, we want to put, you know, 30 of those games on our floor, but we want you to give the content to the whatever B2B provider they may be working with. So that's, you know, with Paula, that's kind of how that worked. So Paula will have some AGS content in their social app because it was a kind of a joint bundled deal with the land-based side. So those, you know, those sort of things are fine with us. In the end, I mean, AGS, you know, 99% of the revenue at maybe 98% of the revenue at AGS is driven by the land-based side of the business. You know, we're a relatively small part of it. We're getting bigger and bigger, but you know, we don't have some massive B2C business that we're trying to protect. I mean, I think there's some people like, you know, like Product Madness is Aristocrat is unlikely to license Lightning Link to any of us anytime soon because they have, it's a massive driver of their B2C business. We don't necessarily have that, which is, the negative sometimes, but also a positive. It allows us to be a little more flexible on what content we are willing to share. And we're willing to share, some of the A content. We get the A content in our social apps, and we're willing to give the A content to some partners, provided they're going to put those games on their floor. We're not just going to go around, giving our content away to just anyone. They have to have a significant presence of AGS content on their casino floor, and then that's a good enough business reason for us to talk about it.
I just feel like the casino, the slot manufacturers like yourselves, with that more progressive thought pattern, will be the ultimate gainers, I feel like, over the next few years, because when I speak to my clients, and the one thing that keeps coming up over and over is, oh wow, this social casino player came onto the floor and specifically asked for this title, which we don't have, because they were playing it on social. And so I feel like the ones where you can actually tie in the social into real money will be the net winners. And I think even though Cygames is out there, pushing their social casino platform only with their content, and you can only get their content with their platform, I feel like that is not the winning model in the future.
I think if you look at Konami and you look at how they've both allowed the advertising of brands like China Shores, one of their important brands, and us and Play Studios and everybody else who has that is spending millions of dollars telling everybody about China Shores, how could that hurt?
In fact,
that is probably the overlooked piece of this, is that their brand is getting in front of so many people without their spend on it, and then they make money off of the fact that it's out there in front of people on the social casino side. The
example was China Shores, actually. It was the player that came onto a tribal casino and said, where's that China Shores game? And so to them, it was, I couldn't find it. Which
is hilarious, right? Because that game is, how old is China Shores? That's got to be a 9-year-old title or something, and it's all but fading away. It literally gets put in the back corner of every casino you go in, and now everyone knows what it is because of social. So it's an interesting progress.
I mean, and everyone in the industry knows it. So it's like, why are you still being so protective of your content?
So I think that's where working together with the manufacturers, and so what we've been working on for a while now, which is having AGS content in our social app and having the AGS content in a bank of machines on the floor, and then having both that content tagged with advertising that's cross-promoting, that you can play this content on the floor and it's right there, prime position, wrapped in marketing that people can see, and then the same with the social app, having that, pushing that, and then on top of that, seeing because we're capturing carded players on both sides, we can then start looking at the data and saying, what is this player doing over time when they're interacting with the AGS machine on the floor and the AGS machine in the social app, based on their card level and their wagering on the property, and we can kind of start to understand what those players are doing and what other things. It's going to be a really interesting, it's an experiment that I think we're going to continue to see within this market, which is that kind of crossbreeding, and see what happens.
When you started pushing the social casino, was Paula worried, or were any of your clients worried that there would be some kind of cannibalization of their floor, that people would stop spending on their floor? It's a different payment mechanism. Maybe they wouldn't be spending $2 a spin, but $5 a month instead. So was there any worry about that? Is there any education? And have you seen anything that would support the opposite, that it's actually not cannibalization, that actually supports your floor more?
From our perspective, there was never any discussion on cannibalization. I do hear it in the marketplace. It's a concern if you haven't spent a lot of time for social. If you're an executive making a decision to make an investment into social casino at any level, you're asking yourself, are these players going to be just sitting at home instead of coming into my casino? And the fact is if they're not going to be playing on your social casino, they are most likely playing on Double Down or Slotomania or Huge or Merca or AGS or Ruby 7 or somewhere they're playing, right? There's an astronomical amount of revenue being generated out of North America on social casino. So they're playing, so why not interact with your brand? So you know, we've been doing a lot of studying of our players, and you know, we've seen only positive results when it comes to incremental trips back to the property from our players and uplift in GGR on those players.
And you? Anything have you seen?
So the empirical data part of it was that Delaware North did a study of their players and found, I think it was what, 60% were playing social casino before they had their own social casino app. So this social casino is not secret. It's not like you're going to be the first one to introduce it and take a player off the casino floor and move them onto their phone. They've already found it. There's been millions and millions of dollars spent telling people about social casino.
How important, I mean, the studies that I've done with my clients, one thing I've seen over and over is, oh, we'll try a new app if you can give me some kind of reward back on premise. How important is that? Of course, not breaking the law, not actually offering. It's in a loyalty currency, not in a playing currency. But how important have you seen that? Have you seen that as like a core part of what you're offering the Polo player?
So there's two sides. So what I've seen, Mark, is everyone asked for it today. So every person we've talked to about social casinos says, how is this going to interact with my loyalty program at some level? You know, it just depends what your appetite is. Is it just card capture so you can start tracking the data and kind of create this 360-degree view of the player? Or is it doing a deep integration so that you have rewards mechanics and you can put those rewards onto property and you can give prizes and added play and things like that that they can then interact with on the property? So there's a lot of different levels, but we're seeing everybody's asking for some level of it. And that's kind of what our core competency has been, having worked with the casino, is doing that really deep integration.
Yeah, we're building rewards for all three of the casino apps.
Have you been?
I mean, everyone we talk to, wants it. That's the whole benefit. When we go out and kind of talk to customers, it's all about, you know, look, you're going to make some money in social. It's not, you are going to make some money, but it really should be treated like a self-funded marketing channel. And I think to do that right, you have to integrate with their reward system, and you have to, you know, have that whole 360-degree view, and you got to get them back to property to really use it right.
I think from the B2B side, I think that's one area that a lot of people underestimate when they go into the B2B side, is just how difficult these land-based CMS systems are to integrate with, and it's not a no-brainer. One big difference I've seen from my clients, so when I say to them, okay, you have to play these apps, these are the, you know, to get a good feel of what you want, the one thing they always come back to me with, which is where I find this industry so different from the land-based real money gaming industry, or even the online real money gaming, is the amount of what they call spam. Oh my God, this thing was spamming me, there's so many pop-ups, there's so many emails, we can't do that. Have you noticed that from the people that you've spoken to or working with, that there's just a fundamental difference in how they communicate with players, how often that they communicate with players, and how do you help educate them to bring them more to thinking like social casino to be successful? If that, I don't know if I'm being totally clear on my question, but I think you get where I'm going.
I mean, the easy answer for us is that we don't do things that the data doesn't tell us to do. So if these aren't working, we're not putting them in front of players. Now, we may put a lot of pop-ups in front of a new player to try to introduce them to the special and the new player special and out of coins moments and things like that. But those are driven based on data, not based on what we think or what they think. And that kind of takes the, oh, you're being mean to the player equation out of it, because if they don't work, we don't put them in front of the player.
It's a fair answer, right? But what's interesting is that you're talking to a group of people who have had to ask permission, whether it's from a gaming regulator, like in New Jersey, every ad has to be approved by the regulator, or some kind of compliance department. And you know, you say to someone, hey, I'm gonna change your creative 5 times today, and they'll like freak out. Have you not noticed a little bit of difference? I mean, the one thing that they say about your app is, oh my God, the AGS app, so many pop-ups.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same answer that Michael has. I mean, we do it all for a reason. We have pretty solid data that the things we do, the events we run, and the promotions we run all not only drive monetization, but they all drive engagement, and players like it. So what I generally tell them is that you'll give it some time. The players will be fine. They'll get used to it. Every social casino app is pretty aggressive when it comes to pop-ups and promotions and things like that. But we have the casino customers we have right now are relatively small, and if they really just are completely uncomfortable with it, we will put some limits on what we do with them, with their particular customers. But then as soon as we did it with one customer who came back and was like, hey, revenue has been a little bit low, and I'm like, yeah, we're not running the same events because you didn't want so many pop-ups. So then they quickly say, okay, yeah, just put those back. So I mean, the results are what really matters, and that's kind of what we let do the talking.
I think helping the marketing team understand that they really have control over the behavior of the message, the behavior that's going to invoke the message. And so, if the marketing team's used to sending out one email a week, and Susie gets that email at 6 o'clock at night because they think that's when the best time is, but really Susie's, watching her children play soccer, or still at work, or Danny's off in the bowling league, but at 10 o'clock at night, they're on the app and they're interacting with the brand, and you know who they are, then the marketing team can really hyper-target the message that they're going to give to them in a meaningful way that's not intrusive, and it's not just going to be spammy. So I think you can educate the marketing team that they have a ton of flexibility, customization, and hyper-targeting when it comes to this, and that can only be helpful to them.
Right. Have you, and you've seen this time and time again. I mean, who manages the ad budget, right? Is it you? Does the casino think that they can do it better? How do you say, no, you can't actually, but invariably they must think they do. How do you deal with that?
So we manage ad budgets and all creative for all of our B2B partners. There may be a point in time where certain groups get savvy enough where mobile app marketing is their core competency, but none of these casino groups have ever done any casino apps or mobile app marketing. So we are clearly the ones that know the most about it and can do the best job in doing it.
But is it an education process that you have to go through with them?
Is to get them to understand that?
Yep.
Perhaps. I mean, we've had no problems with our casino groups, mainly because of their, this is new worlds for them, all three of the groups we work with.
And have you noticed, I mean, you went from being independent to actually being owned by a casino group. Actually, you kind of all are owned by a casino group on some level. Do you think that changes your perspective? That you're owned by a casino group? Has it changed your perspective on how, because you were working with Tropicana before and after. Have you noticed that internally there's any difference?
No, it's really not affect our world very much. It does give me a lot more leverage when I talk to content partners, because Delaware North is a major provider of funds for these groups. Yeah. So I'm able to leverage that, and they've been great help in that.
I think it gives us kind of knowledge we wouldn't have internally about how the thinking of how a casino operator is. So if I'm going to build a new feature set or decide to do something with our product, I can go to the people that run our slot floor. I can go to our CMO, and I can sit down and talk to them about how would they, if I give this to you today, how would you interact with it? What would you want? What would make the most sense for you? And then I can kind of adjust what I'm building to knowing that would make sense to a lot of other CMOs. So I think there's a huge advantage there of knowledge that we can get from them.
Everyone knows about the Caesars sale, right? Like 4.4 billion, and then Churchill Down buying big fish, selling big fish, and these are very large numbers. Do you ever have it so that your casino groups are like, okay, we want a piece of that, right? I'm not going to go and buy a $180 million acquisition, but I want to launch something and make money, not just on my database, but also from acquiring new customers. which in a world where, with escalating customer acquisition costs, could be sort of unrealistic. How do you manage their expectations? Or a better way to ask this question, are these casino groups realistic in their outlook that maybe this is just to monetize my database and to have a good fluid communication with my players? Or are they out there saying, okay, I will monetize my database and I want to go and advertise? So like someone like Pachanga when they're going for best bet and obviously a wider audience. So how do you manage their expectations? Because everyone's like, well, I could be Caesars.
So for us, we look at the land-based casino databases and the marketing efforts there as just one cylinder of an engine. It's not the golden egg that's going to make everything work. We do acquire users both regionally and worldwide for all three of our social casino apps that we do B2B. And half of the players are coming from outside of America. And for a brand like Tropicana, is that good for them? Probably. That's still expanding their brand into the world. They're getting touch points that they never would have had outside of social casino. And as that, decision between where they go and what they interact with, gets made by consumers of social casino, that will help them. We all know that. And with Pachanga, it's the same way with the Best Bet Casino. And obviously, Delaware North has a worldwide reach anyway, so the Lucky North Casino is already helping that.
I mean, it's something that I've seen, right, where they don't know what their expectations are, right? So some of them have zero expectations, right? This is just something, just gravy. And then some of them think, well, Caesars made 4.4, I can at least make 1% of that, right? So, and they don't know whether it's just for their database or more.
Look, every person we talk to has different objectives on what they want to do. I think for the regional casino, it's about, baby steps and crawling before you walk, because at the end of the day, your marketing efforts have traditionally been targeted in a 90, 120, 200-mile radius around your casino. And so if you now have grand expectations that you're going to go compete with Caesars and Huge and Merca and all these guys, there may be some expectations that need to be reset. Again, also depending on your bankroll and what you're going to want to put into this thing. Our thought is always, we're going to do acquisition targeted in the local area. We're going to do retargeting to help support reactivation. We're going to use our marketing dollars that way, and then also within the region to drive people back to the casino. But again, depends on what your objectives are.
Right.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, they're not a whole lot to add to that, but the tribal casinos, I think, and especially the regional ones, are probably better off focusing regionally. And there are probably a handful of commercial casinos, either in Vegas or Atlantic City or some of the other big gambling centers that can really go out with the brand cachet to make a bigger splash in the market. The rest of them it's probably better off focusing regionally and focusing on their, the customers they have relationships with.
And you made a comment earlier about taking a year to retool. What did it take? What was it that took so long? How hard was this?
I think a lot of it was just not necessarily even on the product side. Like our platform is actually relatively powerful and was easily transferable, for lack of a better word, to B2B. So that wasn't really the hardest part. I mean, there's some product gaps we had to fill and still have to fill. And we're rapidly working on that. But that's probably the easy part because we know how to do development, put a plan together, and we execute on it. I think some of the harder part was just the thought process. It's a very different mindset to supporting a enterprise customer and focusing on that versus really drilling down on our UA spend on a daily basis and focusing on the B2C aspect. Similarly, it's a very different process for the larger AGS company. I had to spend an inordinate amount of time with the AGS sales team, drinking with the AGS sales team to get them on board, right? Because when they go to a customer, they have tons of them. They have a limited amount of time they can talk to them about, and trying to get them to talk to them about social, I just had to get top of mind. So I think that whole education process internally just took a while. So that's pretty much it.
So I think I have 1 minute. So Are there any questions from the audience?
Cool. This is actually for all four of you because I really want to hear your insight on this, Melissa. So personally, as a marketer, from a B2C perspective, I can serve up the best ad to the right target to get them to a product, no problem. On the B2B side, if I decide, like, you know what, I want to make the switch. I want to start looking at the casinos and the bigger fish out there to be able to say, hey, I want to start building for you. So I've decided to make the switch. What is that, what's the data points that they're looking at? Do you say, hey, I've made this pretty thing, do you like how it looks? Or is it, hey, this is what our retention looks like, our KPIs as far as a business? Is it the tech side of it? Or is it something as silly as like, hey, we did a chart run 5 minutes before, coming to this meeting and look how many apps we have in the top 20. What does that look like for you guys? I mean, what do you say? I mean, the only person who's brought anything up was about having drinks with the sales team, and I'm all for that. If you guys weren't here earlier, what does that look like? What's that landscape? Is it all of the above? All four of you, please, especially Melissa. I know you're the moderator, but I really do want to hear from all four of you.
It depends on the client, but it is all four above, right? And it is a lot about educating a senior management team on how to know if something's doing well, I'm assuming is what you mean. How to figure out, is this going as expected? So obviously from a revenue number, because they're always looking at the bottom line and from a net profit, but it's also about what is this doing to my casino floor? Is there an uplift on the casino floor? Am I able to communicate? So they are in tuned to understanding all of those factors. But again, are they doing it on their own? A lot of times I'll go to a casino client and say, or a prospective one. Right now I'm even pitching someone, and he's like, I don't know, you have to come out here and educate me and convince me that your services are worth me paying for. So if he decides to go out on his own and he's got these three guys pitching to him and they tell him all the same different things, some of the same things, he won't know necessarily what to look for. So it's also about how much have you educated yourself into knowing what to look for, to analyze if something's been successful or not.
And I think, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just feel like there's a huge difference in knowledge. Sometimes I'm doing actually reference checks to say, hey, how good are these guys? And a lot of the times I'll speak to people who had absolutely no expectations. They're like, you know what? Someone from Scientific Games was trying to sell me some slots, and he sold me a social casino too, so I wasn't expecting anything from it. So this is all gravy to me.
I think one of the things, as someone who is really entering the B2B space for the first time, kind of has to, a big part of it is, the casino industry, and maybe everyone knows, is extremely methodical and conservative, which I think is maybe not intuitive to a lot of people. So it's almost one of those things where if you don't have that street cred, for lack of a better word, of being in the real money space in some capacity, I think it's really hard to get in front of casino executives, because they're always going to ask, well, what else? Who else has done it in my industry? And if it's zero, it's a tough slog to get a casino to be the first one.
I think the same thing. I think you do have to have all of them. I mean, we've come to a point where, like, you're going to get in front of 1, 2, 5 executives, and you're going to be talking about your product, and the majority of them, what have they done? They're playing on these super high-end B2C clients that are really nice and really slick. Most of the room expects the tech to work. That's not even a question. There's this notion of conservation and of their players and protection of their players and their license holders. These casinos are making hundreds of millions of dollars. They're taking zero risk on putting their license at jeopardy or doing anything to jeopardize something with their gaming control, whether it's tribal or whether it's a state-regulated casino. So you really, today, I think you really got to have all the chops in there, and you got to be prepared to diligently talk about all of them in, as Melissa said, an educational type of way, because you have different people and different audiences. That marketing person probably just only played the games and is like, if you're not as fancy as these games on a UI look and feel, then I may downgrade you a little bit. Tech guy's going to be blowing out your tech. Anything?
No. That's,
I mean, you bring up an interesting point too, which is like these casinos are making hundreds of millions. And then I present a model to them where, you know, it takes them a little bit of time to get excited because the number is not nearly as big as their core business. And so to get them to be excited, it has to come down to more than just a financial play. It has to be more than that.
So the entire thing of moving from B2C to B2B, the question then stands: what's the reason for the discussion? I mean, do you guys have like hard numbers from year to year on the UA of the social? And can you tell us what those numbers are, or is there some place that we can go and look at those numbers? Data-wise, like the user acquisition.
So I wasn't here yesterday for Adam's like state of social casino, but I'm assuming that what he presented was, you know, if CPI is $10 to $12, right? Your bankroll's got to be pretty decent to get out there and compete in B2C. Where from a B2B advantage point, if you're a land-based casino operator and you've got a decent-sized database of players and you've got players coming through the casino floor, you've got a natural advertising extension that lowers your CPI across tremendously. That's not to say, as you mentioned earlier, you should be spending money on acquiring players and reactivation through social media channels. But that's a big focal point too, moving to B2C, is if you just don't have the bankroll to take the risk to acquire players and have faith that that you have the team, product, knowledge to convert those into monetizing players, then that's really the next choice you have.
I think there was a collective good point about what Michael was saying with the casino customers and what Bryan was saying about the expectation usage of. I think that those customers that really understand that this is a marketing plan for them and really a daily way to speak to their customers, I think are getting the best use out of a social casino product, that it makes a little bit of money, but to think that it would compete with Slotomania on a daily basis is probably unrealistic. Have you seen your customers changing their marketing plans to be in conversations with their customers more through the social platform?
Yeah, we definitely have. They're seeing some of the CRM that we do within the social casino app and adapting some of the CRM they do on their side. And you know, this whole digital convergence is, you know, a lot of land-based casinos still send out postcards and they still live by those. And you know, that's the way they convert their players. And we are helping all three groups understand that, you know, convergence to digital is a much better way of eventually doing that. This provides a platform where, you know, the engagement of a social casino app versus anything else they would ever put out as an app is 20, 30 times. So they're going to get players that play every single day, and they have an ability to talk to those players through that app. And that's the message that we're pushing really hard, is that, you know, that can have a 1 to 5% impact on top line. And now we're not talking about, you know, a social casino making $1 million a year. We're talking about a $700 million revenue stream going up by 1%. And that's a big number.
I think it also gives the marketing team start realizing that there's this new kind of creative outlet and something that they can get excited about versus the emails and the continuing to send out the mailers and just doing things on the floor. There's really this now interactive piece that they can take advantage of. As an example, we wrote an algorithm that gave all the social casino players, based on how they were playing, a ticket to spin a wheel. But the only way you could spin that wheel is to physically walk into the casino in the next 48 hours. And in the casino, there's this big section, call it 15 feet, with kiosks and a giant advertising and a big screen on the TV, and this wheel spinning. The player comes up and they swipe the card and the wheel spins, and they interact with that, and they win prizes and added play and more bonus chips. And then the marketing team got really creative. They said, wait a sec. They said, let's make this a contest where every time you come and spin, you're also getting a ticket into our monthly drawing, where they give away a car and other prizes. Well, now they've added a third prize in those. So not only are they getting that immediate, I'm going to win something when they're on the floor that day, but then they're going to come back during the monthly grand prize drawing for a chance to win $1,000 or their share of. So I think there's a lot of really, really interesting things and creative things that the marketing team can do once they understand the tool that they now have in their utility belt.
So the resulting answer to should you make the switch is yes. We are actually out of time. If you guys have extra questions for the panel, you can certainly meet them outside. They would be happy to answer those questions. Thank you all for participating today.